Hey, good morning, everybody. The Editing Bard here. Welcome to another live stream, answering your questions and giving writing tips that make sense. Today, I actually have some really great, fun questions to dive into. Just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a fill-in. Wasn't here last week because I was helping moving my mom. That all went smoothly. Hope you guys enjoyed the video of what is a writing coach. And I'm going to have another one coming up next week that talks about what is a developmental editor. I got one that's talking about fan fiction. I have another one that is going to be talking about like ISBN numbers and kind of what you need to know about those. I mean, I got tons and tons of content coming for you guys, so it'll be kind of a mixture moving forward of doing live streams and doing content videos. So hopefully if I can get enough, I can post multiple times a week. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. Appreciate you guys joining in. Coffee has not had its full effect yet. So let's go ahead and dive into the first question or the first topic. So first one is, how long does it take you to write a book? Now, that is super subjective and really, really, it's a very broad question. When you are, let's see, it depends on the type of book you're wanting to write. It depends on your schedule, your availability, what you know of writing, how much learning you're going to be having to do at that time. So, well, let's just kind of break it down a little bit more. When you decide that you want to have when you have a book idea and you want to sit down and you want to write, you need to plan ahead a little bit on the subject, the genre. You need to have a general idea. If you just kind of just start writing without any plan in mind, then it's gonna be very, very hard. You guys are getting the light reflecting in my glasses there. Trying to not blind you. Yeah. Oh well. So when you set out to write a book, you need to have a plan. You need to know generally like what is the story. And there's a difference between having a story and having a plot. I go into that in my the plot donut, which is a worksheet that I created to help you plot out your story and take it from being a concept to an actual story that you can write. It doesn't mean that you can't pants your way through it. It just means that it gives you just enough structure to be able to utilize it effectively. Yeah, it's such a broad question. You want to, in addition to taking that time and kind of planning out a little bit of what it is that you're doing, you also need to take into account how much time you have to write daily. I see a lot of authors don't do this. They just kind of start and then they will write a couple thousand words and they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. And then nothing happens because they don't have anything set up. If you're going to write a book, then you need to create a writing process that works for you. So for example, and I think I've touched on this back, it might have been in the first live stream I did. So the writing process that I did when I was writing 50,000 words in January this year was I figured out how many words that I could type per hour, not per minute. Per minute doesn't mean anything when you're writing a book, in my opinion. And I found out that I could type, if I had an idea of what it was that I was typing about 1,300 words an hour. That translates into probably closer to 800 to 1,000 if I'm just pantsing something, which I was. But I based off that's how I structured my writing time, because I knew that I would need to get at least an hour and a half to 2 hours in order to have that, to get a whole chapter done. That is kind of along the lines of what you need to do to create a writing process when you're starting to figure out how long does it take you to write a book. Because I essentially wrote a novel in the month of January. I busted out 50,000 words. So it's possible to do, but you really have to know your writing style. Hey, welcome. You have to know your writing style. You have to know what it is that you're capable of writing within a certain time frame, so that way you can schedule it out. Then you want to look at, that's kind of the short-term goals for writing a book. The overall long-term goals are, when do I want to have this book done by? And, unless you're doing like NaNoWriMo during November, so National Novel Writing Month, for those who don't know, you sit down, you bust out 50,000 words, that's your goal. It's a great goal to have. I didn't do it in November, I did it in January, and my brain was just like, I was so exhausted pumping out that many words and pantsing the entire thing. I had no plot. I had a concept. I didn't even have a plot. Plot came with draft 2. Generally, 3 to 6 months, depending on your schedule, is, I would say, a very workable time frame to write a novel. But you need to know what it is that you're writing, in general, the genre that you're writing in. You need to know how quickly or how many words an hour you can type that allows you to structure your time to get chapters pumped out, because you just take it a chapter at a time. Don't write the whole novel in a day. Just take your time, write the chapters. Don't worry about naming the chapters. Just put chapter number, and then that's it. If you're one of those people who can mix and match the chapters, I don't know how you do it. I would go insane. I couldn't do it. But having those things, getting started on those things, will be so beneficial in helping you write your book. There's people who bust out novellas and they publish like 12 books a year. They're doing it like on a monthly basis. It's crazy. That's what they do full time. So you need to take into consideration your job, your family life, your relationships. It's not just sit down and write a book. There's other things that you have to take into account. And you don't do it at the expense, especially of family, but at the expense of relationships. You also don't find time to write. It's not a thing. doesn't exist, doesn't actually work, because then you're just going, I don't have any time. Shoot, I'm not going to be able to write. It doesn't work. You have to make time to write. This is what I talk to all of my clients about when, regardless of whether it's story coaching or a developmental edit, and they're just kind of on the struggle bus. You need to have a writing process. It's absolutely essential if you want to be an author and you want to write a book. You have to have a writing process. My writing process is not going to work for you. It's not going to work for my clients. They're not, you don't put yourself in a box. You build the box around you. See, you make your own box is how that works. So the tools that I provide to you in terms of advice, writing processes, goals, word counts, tips, those kinds of things, those are general. Those are things that I have found that worked for me, but they're not going to all work for you. So you have to take those and fit them together with what you have going on in your life. My writing schedule is going to be different than someone else's writing schedule. My writing schedule right now is pretty much non-existent because I have so many people that I'm working with right now, which is awesome. I love it. But my own writing, I've had to put to the side, and I haven't made time for it. I haven't made it a priority. That's the key, is that you make time for what is a priority. And that is relationships. That is your spouse, your kids, your friends, your dog, your cat. Like you make time for that which is important. If writing is important enough to you, then you will make time on your calendar. Bracket it out. If I could figure out for the life of me how to share a screen, I would do that, and I could show you guys my schedule. But I use Google Calendars, and maybe I'll end up doing a video on that at some point, a little tutorial on how to get a writing process going. But I have my whole day today from 9 to 4 is filled. I have stuff all day long. I would not be able to keep track of it if I did not use Google Calendars. It's just how it is. You should be using some sort of Google Calendars or whatever the iOS system has, and an app that kind of keeps track of everything for you, alerts you, gives you updates, reminders, notifications, have buffers. Like seriously, I am going to have to make a video on that because it's so important for the writing process. So the book can take as little or as long as you give time to write it. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet there to be like, you can write a book in 30 days. You can. You got to make it a priority, though. And that's just kind of how it is. But it is possible. So you would need to decide those things. I'll put a link down in the show notes. I used an app called WriteTrack, and it's a funky URL. So don't try and Google WriteTrack. I don't think it'll show up right. But what it is you create a challenge. They use it for NaNoWriMo. You create a challenge, you give yourself a word count, a start date, an end date, and then it populates how many words you need to write per day. And sometimes if that's the only thing that you need to do to get going, that's what you do to get going. And that's your writing process. I mean, 300 words a day doesn't sound like a lot, but at the end of a month, it's going to add up. So don't take these big numbers and be like, well, I want to write 120,000 words. That's impossible. It's not. You just break it down into smaller chunks. You just keep whittling it down. Spread out the time. Longer the book, or bigger the book, the longer you should have. The smaller the word count per day is going to be, the more likely you are to actually hit that goal, depending on your time. Okay, so that's all I'll say in regards to that, because it is super subjective and dependent on the person. But hopefully those tips will kind of help you. Next question is, what is your work schedule like when you're writing? Again, that is super subjective to the person. For me, my work schedule is fairly busy, because I have developmental edits going on. I have story coaching. I have meetings. I have calls with students. I'm a part of a press, and so it's kind of a combo of story coaching and developmental editing, where they have no idea like how to write a book, and we kind of teach them. Like, they have a professor who teaches them and walks them through, and then I kind of get to be there to help kind of flesh out their stories a bit. I have 11 students under me for that. In addition to, I'm in the process of creating a writing group in my local town. I'm creating workshops. I'm doing YouTube live streams and content videos. So during the 9 to 5, which is how I've structured my business hours, it's pretty packed. I don't have a lot of time between 9 to 5. And then it's pretty much 7 to whenever I go to bed is kind of like my own private time. And that is typically when I'm doing admin stuff for my business. I'm connecting with readers on Facebook, on Twitter, figuring out how to utilize SEO for pretty much everything. Website, YouTube. I mean, running your own business is incredibly hard work, and I don't think I fully understood just how much I would be doing. So my work schedule is very crazy, and I know that for a lot of people, I mean, they're working 8, 10, 12 hours, 14 hours a day, depending on where they're at in their job. It doesn't leave a lot of time to write. That's one of the main reasons why, I've been writing for 13 years, but I don't have a book published, right? I started working when I was 17. I'm 29 now. I started writing when I was 16 and still don't have a book published. I was working. I mean, I had to make a living. I had to, I didn't just start off as the editing bard. I didn't have this beard going on. I had a lot more hair back then. This is what happens when you write. Your hair just falls out and melts to your face. But people think that they have to put their entire life on hold to write a book. They think that too many people fall in the trap. Well, I need to have a real job in order to write. And I'm not saying that there isn't something to that. Like, you do need to have something that provides an income while you're writing, especially your first book, probably second book. It takes a lot of hard work to get to the point where you're making a living off of your writing. I haven't gotten there. That's why I do developmental editing is because this gets to be my job, and it does allow me more free time to do writing when I make it a priority. So that's really kind of the key, is you have to structure your day around writing. If that's what you want to do, make it a priority. It's on your schedule, but you also have to schedule real life stuff too. So if it takes you 13 years to write a book and finally get it published, that's what it takes. But at least you're writing. That's the big thing, is that I've run into some people who they really look down on me and say, well, you shouldn't be helping people. You don't even have a book. You're right. I don't have a book, but I know how to tell a story. I know how to help people tell a story. I've been training people since I was 17 on how to do things efficiently. I know how to create worksheets and processes that help people. So just because I haven't published a book doesn't mean that I can't help somebody walk through the process. I've done it. So don't let someone look down on you just because you don't have a book published yet and you've been writing for a long time. Like, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to write the story, as long as you're writing the story. That's the most important part. There's times where there's going to be breaks and huge chunks of time where you're simply not writing because life gets busy. That's a part of life. That's just how it is. So it's going to look different for everybody, but to kind of beat a dead horse, you have to prioritize it. You have to work it in your schedule. That doesn't mean that you have to wake up at 4 a.m. every day to have extra time, because that's not a healthy way to go. I don't think anybody is super happy or productive at 4 a.m. in the morning. I would be a zombie, and it'd be bad. Like, no one would like me if I woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning every day. So take the time, prioritize writing, work it into your schedule when you can, and that will help you be able to write your book more efficiently. Hello. And if you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to comment in the chat. I'm happy to answer those. Going on to the next one. So this one I got from a friend, Shell. God, I feel like I'm butchering that every single time. I apologize. So she was asking about tropes. Now, I love using tropes. And the question that she had specifically was, how does she, well, here, I'll read it and make a lot more sense that way. I'm new to genre writing, and I'm thinking about writing a super cheesy story that hits all the main fantasy tropes. Almost like a parody, but serious, if that makes sense. My goal is to just see if I can put together a coherent narrative that makes good use of traditional tropes. Does this sound like a good writing exercise or a waste of time? It'll probably be terrible, and I'm sure I would never publish it, but I'm so stuck on my other piece of litfic, I just want something else. I do write fanfic. That's true. I do have other readers on Wattpad. So I'm self-published for fan fiction. And technically, to answer this, so I did write kind of like a superhero parody in along the lines of what Chell is talking about, called These Guys. So These Guys is on the app Texties. If you guys want an idea, if you just want a good laugh, like, I highly recommend going. Like, I've enjoyed writing that so much. So I have a stereotypical Russian named Pain, because and he's like the muscle without a brain in many cases, but he's kind of a big softy underneath everything. He and one of the other main characters, like they're kind of have this awkward bromance where they're like sitting down and watching This Is Us, and they're both crying. Like, I put in a lot of real world stuff just to kind of fill it in. There's the badass vampire chick who's got a heart of gold beneath the crusty exterior. There's the kind of bumbling doofus who doesn't know what he's doing, and turns out he's like, oh, I have powers. There's the cocky zombie killer, like Daryl from Walking Dead. If you imagine like Daryl, he's kind of like that, minus the crossbow. And then Mary, who is Mary Sue. So she is literal perfection, and she's one of my favorites to write because she's just good at everything, and everyone hates her for it. And then there's William, who's like the knight, who's like maiden. It's great. I had so much fun writing it. I still have 2 more stories, but technically I did get paid for those, and I did publish through Texies. So while I don't have like a book, I did do those. Super proud of those. So much fun. Go check it out. These guys, Origins. There's, how many are there now? 4. I think there's going to be 6 by the time I'm done. I don't write one shots. I write series. Anyway, I wanted to take like all of the tropes and flip it instead. So instead of being superheroes, like all of these characters are sitting in their house. So it's like Big Brother kind of meets, I'm trying to think of what another example would be, like a reality TV show. And I mean, it's absolute ridiculousness. But that was the whole point of it. It was to poke fun at these tropes, so the Russian guy who's a softie. Tropes are so much fun to work with if you make them work for you. So the way that you can do that is by subverting the expectations of the readers. So here's how I've done that. It wasn't with these guys. It was with my fan fiction series on Wattpad. So had a trope. I knew based on that trope and reader expectation that the readers were going to expect a certain thing. Yeah, I would agree. Very much like that. And it's like the ending is it's going to be awesome. I totally lost my train of thought. Right. So set up the expectations for the readers, and knowing what they were expecting, I waited to just the right moment, and it's different for everyone's story. And then I subverted it. I flipped it on its head. I changed the meaning of the trope. It's either with another trope, or I just blew it out of the water completely, which is why I'm pretty sure most of my readers are traumatized and probably in need of therapy. It's because of that reason. It's really mean to do. I'm an author. I'm kind of she knows. Parody knows. So using the tropes in that way is so much fun because you are taking something that is familiar to the readers and you're changing it into something completely different, which leaves them just kind of going, wait, what? that's not how that was supposed to go. And it engages them. So it's not putting them to sleep. It's entertaining. I'm trying to think. So William in These Guys, very tropey in just full chivalry and heavy on the like medieval talk of like angsty maiden, that kind of stuff. And then it switches later on, and it's much more entertaining. And the villain is an overly villainous villain who revels in villainy. Like, that was a Wattpad thing that I started. I don't remember whose character I was talking about at that point. But it was an overly villainous villain who revels in villainy. And I took that with one of the main villains in These Guys, and then just took that to an extreme, where this guy, he crushes kittens with his bare hands because he's just that evil. Just because. And the villain without a reason to be a villain is the trope. And I just take it to the extreme, and it's funny, it's entertaining, and I have the characters comment on that. Like, every time he's like, someone will make a comment about the villain taking a kitten, squishing it, and they're all just like, he does that? Like, who does that? Even the most villainous of villains are just kind of like, that's just kind of messed up. Like, we don't do that. That's not okay. You should probably get help. So that's a super fun way to take tropes, is to dive in and literally just have fun with it. Like, you don't even stop yourself from just playing up the tropes. You just play it so hard, you just go for it, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be funny, because everyone knows what the trope is that you're playing. So like Mary, the Mary Sue character, I know it was one of those things where I was like, what is like going to be so bad that he is just like an over the top villain, and crushing kittens was just it. And he, like, his pet cat changes from story to story. I don't know if anybody notices that, but it starts off as Fluffy, and then it's Snookums, and then I don't remember what the last cat was. It was some other just obnoxious name, and the two villains are talking about it. And he's like, "Whatever happened to that cat?" He's like, "Got too sassy." It's just like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're seriously messed up in the head. Like, who does this? And this is the villain. So, yeah, when you're playing around with tropes, you either use it as a setup to subvert the reader expectations at some point in the story, or you just go so hard on playing up the tropes that it's borderline a comedy, while still being very entertaining and still having a serious tone. Because I mean, like, in These Guys, and I mean, this is going to be spoilers for those who haven't, to an extent, but you know, the overall tone is very serious because there's a genre war about to break out. I mean, I go hard on these tropes, and it's all fiction, different genres. I mean, it's characters, authors, everything. I went for it. And Verity might know, but it was inspired by just a rant that I did on Wattpad that had multiple characters inside my head, like HK-47 from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic shows up, Sam shows up, Bilbo shows up, Frodo shows up. I don't remember who else shows up, but it's just like this running dialogue in my head, like while I'm trying to write. That's what it's like. Everybody's vying for my attention. It started with that. That was my. That's how I got the idea for this. Was just a bunch of random characters all smushed together, living together, waiting for their big break in their own books, and then it just blew up from there. And I just kept going hard on the tropes. So when you do the tropes, either use them to subvert the reader expectations or just go full bore and just enjoy it. Just see what happens when you just take it to the nth degree. Because seriously, it's so much fun. It's so much fun to do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the trope subject. And this can be done in any genre. Like you don't have to do it. Like mine falls under like action comedy, because there's lots and lots of action, plenty of comedic elements in there. But those tropes have a purpose. I don't really subvert that. Thank you. I don't really subvert the expectations too much there, because it's not meant to take itself super seriously. It's supposed to be just kind of this rompy fun, it's supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to get a laugh out of it, and that's one of the fun things of using tropes. I know I've said that, but it's subverting the reader expectation by using tropes is one of my favorite things to do. They just don't expect it, and that makes for great plot twists. By the way, if you're writing a book and you have someone who's kind of like a stereotypical character, is borderline a Mary Sue, let's say, right? They're almost perfection. Ray. Sorry, I thought of Star Wars, and then it had an allergic reaction. And you take that and you break it. You just full on break it, and that leaves you with a moldable character. So for instance, in these guys, Mary Sue stops being perfect for a period of time. And oh yeah, smashing tropes. So good. Mary Sue stops being perfect for a period of time, and she's just like freaking out. She's just like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. She's bumbling over things. She's falling downstairs. Like, I took the trope, I broke the trope, and then what I did was I put it back together again. So she becomes perfect again. She does everything perfectly, but she's trying to not be perfect. She actually enjoyed it more being not perfect, and now she's stuck. She's stuck being perfect. She's doing a painting in gosh, I don't remember what story it was at this point. I think it was Bring the Pain. But so she's trying to paint. She's trying to get back to not being perfect, and she puts a little beauty mark or whatever. And all the other characters here she's just screaming, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, she's dying." They go in there, and she's like, "I did it. I messed it up." And they're all like, "She's like, what are you talking about? It's a painting of you. I don't understand." And she's like, "Look right there. It's a beauty mark right there." And they're all like, "You have a beauty mark." So she got so excited because she thought she messed it up. And so like that's the fun things that you can do with tropes is you can break the tropes, or you set up the trope, you break the trope, and then you can always put it back together again, and then just have it be like this comedic moment. Obviously, depending on the character. Like I would love to see that happen with Rey from the new Star Wars series, like because that is Mary Sue to a T. Picks up a lightsaber, instantly knows how to use a lightsaber. Never flown the Millennium Falcon or anything for that matter. Instantly knows how to fly everything, do loop-de-loops, crazy things, cut the power, rewire the entire ship to then break gas lines and like all of this other madness. Instantly knows how to use the Force. Jedi mind trick on the Stormtrooper. Beats Kylo, who is a trained Sith warrior. I'm showing my Star Wars nerdiness a little bit, and more of my ranty. I have so many issues with the Last Jedi side. And if you want to see a full rant, go to Wattpad. It's there, the full thing. I might actually move that over to my my blog at some point just for fun. But yeah, I mean those things are unbelievably unbelievable, and like those are the types of things that I'm making fun of in these guys. Is just these just ridiculous things that shouldn't happen. These tropes, like the chosen one, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, she needs to get her butt whooped at like the opening section of The Rise of Skywalker, and then she actually needs to be trained, hopefully by a Luke Skywalker Force Ghost or something, because they just assassinated his character with, oh my god, I can't even. I will just go full rant again. My blood pressure will skyrocket just thinking about it. The 2-hour game of space tag and the Hunger Games world with giant furry cat horses. I don't know anybody who watched that and was just like, this was an awesome movie. And the plot was just like, bam. You can use a lot from that movie on like how not to write. Don't do these things when writing a book. Don't have a character be a Mary Sue. Don't have her skip the entire hero's journey. The entire hero's journey. The struggle. Don't write a cantankerous old mentor who drinks milk from walrus breasts. Like, don't do that. That's not okay. Don't put that in a book. Don't put that in a movie. It shouldn't be there. I mean, just don't do this. But yeah, you can, if you watch, actually, you know what? This will be like a fun homework thing for you guys. Is watch pitch meetings. Go to YouTube. I'll post a link down to the pitch meeting playlist because seriously, it is this guy's entire YouTube channel is about calling out the ridiculousness of some of these movies. Like the new Lion King. He's just like, hey, let's make more money. Just rehashing this and making it live action. You're like, but it's CGI. Yeah, it's live action. But it's CGI. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's live action. I mean, it's himself talking to himself. Watch it. It's hilarious. It will actually help you write better, I swear, because it's gonna point out all of these obvious things, and you're just gonna go, oh wow, I didn't notice that before. But I'm gonna now make sure that I don't do that in my book because that isn't good. All right, I think I've talked enough. I've I've probably rambled and ranted about tropes longer than I should have. Let's see. What category or genre do you think it fits into? I'm not sure what they were talking about. I'm assuming that they were just talking about their story. Surprisingly enough, I come across a lot of authors who they don't know what genre they're writing their story in. And to me, that doesn't really make sense, because you kind of have to have an idea of what you're going to be writing. You're welcome. I'm glad you've been enjoying it, which is my ranting. Your book, too many people write a book for everyone. And that's not how you want to write your book. You want to write your book that it can be enjoyed by people, but it's targeting a certain audience. You need to know, like, are you targeting an adult audience? Because the tone of the book is going to be way different than a young adult is going to be. It's completely different dynamics. Hunger Games it's more of that young adult, maybe new adult. New adult tends to have more sex-related stuff in it than young adult does typically. Versus, so, Hunger Games is a young adult, new adult, versus something like, trying to think of I want to use something different than Lord of the Rings. Dune. I'll go with Dune. So the Dune saga, it's a epic space opera that spans now like some 25 plus books. The tones in them are completely different. One, you have third person omniscient, and then the other one is first person present tense. So just in that sense, totally different stories, totally different themes, different tones, everything. If you're going to write a book, you need to have a general sense of who your audience is. My audience is more of a young adult, so I'm focused in more on YA than I am trying to hit the adult audience. One, YA is a little more forgiving in general than the adults. And at some point, I would probably consider doing like a middle grade with Udar, who's one of the main characters in my novel. That is a younger Udar, kind of going through life. So I would absolutely consider doing that, but it's a different tone. You have to write for your audience. Middle grade is so much fun. I haven't really read much middle grade. Would Chronicles of Narnia be middle grade? Because it's like the kids are younger, and typically middle grade means that like your protagonist is typically a younger age. Yeah, I would guess that Chronicles of Narnia would technically be like a middle grade book. It's probably a little bit more mature middle grade book. And by mature, I just mean the writing in general, just because C.S. Lewis he just had such an amazing way with words. So you need to have a genre. Because you also have to think about how you're going to market it. You can't just write a book and be like, I don't know, I might try putting it in fantasy. Okay, well, what's your book about? Aliens. Well, that's probably not going to fit in fantasy then. You gotta know what you're writing. Middle grade has different levels for sure. Middle grade in there. Okay. Wait, The Journey's middle grade? Or are you talking about a different book? I'll wait to see that. I'm curious now. Because I didn't pick up middle grade vibes. I picked up more YA vibes. Different book. Okay. Swirls of Sand. I don't think I've read that one. I think that one was still well, I haven't. I only poke around on Wattpad every now and then, but I think that one was still on Wattpad. Anyway, my friend VA, her book is actually coming out October 1st as of right now, and it's called The Journey. You guys should do it. You guys should go pre-order it, and I think you're accepting pre-orders now, so I'm gonna have to go put that link up. That link is going to be in the show notes. If you guys want to read The Journey by my friend Verity, please go and pre-order it. It is an amazing book. I'm going to get to do a review on it later on. But what was I talking about? Oh, the difference is you need to know how you're going to market your book. You need to know who you're going to market to. And in order to do that, you need to have an idea of your audience and what genre it's going to fall into. Now, it can, with the YA and middle grade, you can kind of fudge the genres a bit. You can kind of have a little bit more of a mix with genres in YA. It's a little more forgiving in that. If you're writing for adults, then you need to have a genre. You can have a little bit of a crossover, but I mean like little bit. They are looking for something very, very specific when they're picking up a book. So you got to know your market. You got to know your audience. You got to know your genre. And I mean, really, that's how you plan out a book. This goes all the way back to the first question of how long does it take you to write a book? As long as it takes you to figure out what you're writing. know your genre, know your audience, write for yourself. Don't write to please the audience. Write for yourself, and then keep them in mind. Keep the audience in mind. But write the story that you want to write, and then you tailor it a little bit after you've gotten that first, second, third draft done to fit with the market. Otherwise, you're never going to sell any books. There are lots of authors who do this. They are like, well, or the best one is like, they're like, I'm on Amazon's best-selling list. It's like, but what category? Because you can choose just this obscure category and become a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So it doesn't actually mean anything to be a bestseller on Amazon, depending on what your categories are. Right. Yeah. And sometimes you'll write a book and figure out what audience is for, and then continue writing books for that audience. Absolutely. Like I didn't start out wanting to write YA. I started out writing something that was more along the lines of epic fantasy, trying to hit more of a Tolkien-like level. And my writing was very stiff, very formal. I like reading that because there's a poetic sense to it. I can't pull off that same level, and I like having a little less rigidity, and so I found out that I write better for YA. I mean, that's one of the things that I learned from going on Wattpad and writing fan fiction is that I was writing a story and then I started writing it for the audience, which was primarily age ranges. I mean, it was from 13 to typically like 19, 20. That was kind of that range, and very few adults. But I mean, they're not really reading a lot of fan fiction anyway. But yeah, it is absolutely right. You're going to start writing a story because you want to write it. You have the idea, and then you'll start to kind of think about like, oh, who do I want my author, or who do I want my audience to be? But at least having a genre, at least one solid genre. Like I said, you can kind of mix some, but if you're going to write fantasy, like, don't have it be like fantasy, horror, paranormal, sci-fi. Don't do all of those mixed together, because you're going to spread yourself too thin, because you can't market any of those individually because you've combined them all together. If you have science fantasy is a thing, so you could merge those. I've really wanted to figure out how to do a science fantasy one. But you could take science fantasy. It's kind of a niche genre, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if you write that, there was one guy I was talking to, his was like fantasy or dungeon punk. I'd never even heard of this, but it was like fantasy steampunk. I was like, I love the sound of this story. Like, can I please read? Like, I really want to read this. But that's taking two different genres and kind of mixing them together, but it's two genres. You're not just throwing out there and hoping something sticks. You're picking two, and you can market it to that niche, and then you can own that niche. So it's not a bad thing to have a niche. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the main thing with that is, what category, genre do you think it fits into? You have to figure that out. And it might be as you're writing, and that's okay. But before your book is done, and before you self-publish, or before you submit it to someone, an agent, like, you need to know your genre, or the two genres that you're kind of mixing together, because you need to express that to somebody. You have to communicate it to somebody who's going to understand what it is that you're talking about. And if they don't get it, your readers aren't going to get it, because that's what they do. So that would be kind of how to pick that category. Yeah, I'm going to save some of these other questions for next time. Any questions that you guys had that I didn't touch on today? Last couple of minutes that we have. I'm not going to have a live stream next week. I'll be uploading a content video. It's either going to be about fan fiction or developmental editing. I haven't decided which. Might be edging on fan fiction, just because I can get to go full nerd a little bit, and that's always fun. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today, unless you guys have any questions. And thank you, by the way, for I love interacting with you guys. Do I have a trope that I love to use as is without subverting or satirizing it? I think the one that I enjoy the most is that I don't typically I think the mentor trope is probably one of my favorites. That one is, and Udar falls into that in this novel. He's very much the the reluctant mentor to Trinia, and there's so much interaction that the mentor has with the protagonist or the main character that I love reading about in stories. And that could be a best friend, or it could be, that older kind of sagely person, which is kind of what he is, only he's like super grumpy and cantankerous in this one, more so than usual. So yeah, that's probably the only one that I don't really subvert. I try and make it unique while still being familiar. I do make a joke about it where, like, this is in the first draft, but like shortly after they think he dies, he comes back and he's like, "What? You didn't think I was going to die this early into the adventure, did you?" Because that's what usually happens. That's the trope, is the mentor comes along and then immediately dies following a battle. And it's just like, no, they can actually have a mentor the entire time. They don't have to die right away. So that was probably the only way that I subverted that expectation. But it was more of just kind of a play on it than actually subverting it. All right, let's see. I discovered I'm drawn to the Nick of Time epic rescue, Helm's Deep style. That one is good. I do enjoy that one. I also enjoy like the assassin with the heart of gold. So they'll just go around and they'll just be killing people for cash, but they're also just like, oh, a kitten, I'll save it. That kind of thing. I love doing that. That's fun. Or like the super, like Nanelle from, for those of you who don't know, Nanelle is a character from my Lord of the Rings fan fiction. She's orphaned, she's adopted, she's taken in, she's raised, and then, she kind of grows up to be this badass. And it's not, it wasn't just she just knows how to do everything. It was, hey, like, she's been trained her whole life to do this. So she actually can back up. She has a reason why she's that way. She's not a Rey who's just like, I picked up a sword, I can swing, I didn't do that. Let's see. Mentors are so cool. They have awesome potential that a lot. I agree. I mean, it's just like the mentors are that there's so much that you can do with the mentor trope, without killing them off and then just leaving the character traumatized for the sake of traumatizing the character. Like for Gandalf, right? Gandalf in the Mines of Moria, he's the mentor to Frodo, but his character, death, spoilers, for those of you who haven't read or seen a book or been living under a rock for the last decade, or multiple decades, his death has a purpose because it allows Aragorn then to step up into that new role. So it's not just killing him off for the sake of traumatizing everybody, because he does bring him back. Yeah, I was going to say no one stays dead in Tolkien, but that's not true. That's Marvel. People die in Marvel, but they just come back. But yeah, I mean, that type of mentor role. And then Gandalf was a mentor to Pippin. So there's so much wisdom that can be shared to the main character without having them just be a traumatized little muffin running around and be like, oh, poor me. It's been done too much. Like, I want to see more active mentor roles. One of my favorite ones is the Song of Albion trilogy by Stephen R. Lawhead. And Guy from our world falls into Albion, which is like the mystical world And it's like Celtic culture. He doesn't speak the language. The dude has no idea what he's doing. And he is assigned a bard, hint, hint. And that bard is his mentor throughout the entire thing. And I love the friendship between them. So the mentor doesn't have to be the old, wise, sagely person. It could be a bard. It could also just be a friend who's giving advice and helping that person along the way. So let's see. My mentor character shows up in the later book, is there to help the main character heal from trauma, not die and give more. See? There's so many things that you can do with it. You could traumatize the muffin, and then you can fix the muffin with a mentor. Either way, you can either break it or you fix it, or you just keep the mentor alive the entire time, and then you traumatize the mentor. Now that is an interesting twist. There's a way to subvert reader expectations right there, guys. You break the mentor of the main character, and then he's the one that needs fixing. I don't know what you're talking about, Verity. I don't nope, don't understand even a little bit what you might be hinting at right there with the main character. So for those of you who don't know, Udar is the main character in my Narnia fan fiction, and also in my upcoming novel, The City of Snow and Stars. And he is a angry, angsty mentor character who has a lot of background issues and trauma that he's dealing with for a multitude of reasons. I really am. I really am. Yeah, I don't think you guys have read. I know Verity has read part up to a certain amount, but I've changed it so the plot is now even more angsty and feelsy with Udar than it was previously. So, all right, I've gone over my time. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the live stream. I've enjoyed interacting with you and getting to answer your guys' questions. For those of you who have taken the time to watch this, thank you so much. If you like these and want to see more, please hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like button. It helps me, it helps the channel. Lets me know that someone does exist out there. Granted, I know that 2 people exist because they've been commenting on this. But yeah, it helps the channel. And I'm looking to bring you guys more content. If I had the little notepad, my desk is a mess. But I mean, we're going to be talking about character creation, talking about plotting, brainstorming, outlining. I mean, there's going to be a ton more content coming your guys' way. And if you have questions, my website is in the show notes. Go to the website, shoot me an email, or comment your questions down below, and I will make sure that I answer them on the next live stream. Thank you guys so much. Take care.